Have you ever felt the quiet ache of love in absence, a presence that lingers not in words but in shadows, gestures, and silences? Love does not always announce itself boldly. Sometimes it whispers through distance, hides behind protective walls, and reveals itself only in fleeting, tender moments. In those subtle spaces where fear and desire meet, the heart speaks in a language far richer than words, a language we often overlook. Emotional distance in an avoidant partner is often one of the most misunderstood aspects of a relationship. At first glance, it can appear as indifference or a lack of affection, but beneath this exterior lies a complex psychological landscape where love and fear coexist. The avoidance withdrawal is not a rejection of intimacy. Rather, it is a carefully constructed protective layer that shields the psyche from perceived threats of vulnerability and engulfment. This layer forms as a result of early relational experiences where emotional expression may have been met with inconsistency, dismissal, or over-intrusiveness. Over time, the psyche internalizes a belief that closeness is dangerous, and a protective mechanism develops to preserve the sense of self. In this framework, love is not absent. It is hidden, folded into subtle actions and symbolic gestures, often communicated in ways that may be invisible to the untrained eye. The avoidance heart operates in paradox, craving connection while simultaneously recoiling from the intensity it provokes. Their mind engages in a constant negotiation, weighing the risk of emotional exposure against the need for relational intimacy, creating patterns of behavior that can appear contradictory, confusing, or even cold. Observing these patterns carefully reveals that emotional distance is not emptiness. It is an elaborate defense against a perceived threat of loss or consumption, a shadow that guards the tender interior. Love manifests quietly within this shadow through indirect expressions, small acts of care that may go unnoticed, attention to details that only a close observer would recognize, and subtle attempts to maintain presence without overt declaration. This protective distance is also a way for the avoidant to preserve autonomy and identity within the relationship, because for them, merging too closely with another can feel like erasure of self. It is a tension that operates at both conscious and unconscious levels, where the heart longs for intimacy, but the mind enforces boundaries designed to prevent psychological harm. Understanding this mechanism requires patience, empathy, and an awareness of the symbolic language of attachment, where absence can coexist with devotion, silence can coexist with care, and withdrawal can coexist with longing. It challenges the observer to move beyond literal interpretations of behavior and to recognize that the avoidance love is often hidden beneath layers of fear, a love that requires discernment to perceive, validation to flourish, and gentle engagement to allow its emergence. Recognizing emotional distance as a protective layer reframes the relationship experience, turning what may initially feel like rejection into a subtle, complex dialogue between two inner worlds, one of yearning, one of caution, and the dynamic tension that ultimately defines the avoidance way of loving. Inconsistent presence is one of the most defining traits of an avoidant partner, and it is often a source of confusion, frustration, and misinterpretation in relationships. On the surface, it may appear as unpredictability, detachment, or a lack of commitment, but beneath this behavior lies a profound internal struggle between the desire for connection and the fear of losing autonomy. The avoidant psyche is in constant negotiation, attempting to reconcile the longing for closeness with the anxiety that intimacy can feel overwhelming, suffocating, or exposing. Each time they draw near, it is often motivated by genuine affection, interest, or concern, yet each withdrawal is equally fueled by self-protective impulses rooted in early experiences of attachment, emotional discomfort, or perceived vulnerability. This oscillation between engagement and retreat is not arbitrary. It is a symbolic expression of love constrained by fear. Observing their presence and absence reveals a rhythm that mirrors their inner emotional turbulence, a dance between approach and avoidance, desire and self-preservation. Their actions communicate affection in bursts. Moments of warmth, attentiveness, and engagement appear amid periods of distance, creating an intricate pattern that can feel inconsistent yet is deeply revealing. These intermittent gestures are a subtle language, a way of testing the relational waters while maintaining a sense of safety, a quiet negotiation of trust with themselves and with the partner. Each instance of withdrawal is often accompanied by an internal dialogue, assessing whether the intimacy experienced is safe enough to continue or whether retreat is necessary to preserve identity and emotional equilibrium. In this way, inconsistency becomes a window into the avoidant's emotional reality, allowing the perceptive observer to discern the presence of love even in the face of apparent absence. The avoidant's presence is, therefore, not only a reflection of affection, but also a measure of their comfort with vulnerability, revealing the ongoing negotiation between attachment needs and protective instincts. Recognizing this pattern requires patience and a reframing of expectations, understanding that their inconsistent behavior is not an indication of disinterest, but a manifestation of the tension between two competing forces within their psyche. It invites a perspective that sees love not merely in constant affirmation, but in subtle engagements that emerge despite fear. When moments of connection appear, they are often laden with significance, signaling that the avoidant is negotiating with their own internal barriers to maintain closeness. Each return from withdrawal is a testament to the persistence of attachment and a reminder that their love, though hidden or mediated by distance, is real, persistent, and constrained by psychological dynamics rather than absence of feeling. Inconsistent presence thus becomes both a symptom of internal turmoil and a coded expression of enduring attachment, revealing that even fear-driven retreat cannot erase the underlying desire to love and be loved. Subtle gestures are often the most revealing signs of love in an avoidant partner, precisely because verbal expression of emotion can feel threatening, overwhelming, or intrusive to them. Unlike partners who may communicate affection directly through words, declarations, or overt displays, avoidants tend to express their attachment in indirect, often understated ways. These gestures are symbolic, encoded expressions of care that speak to their inner reality without forcing them into vulnerability they are not ready to face consciously. Paying attention to these nuances requires a sensitivity to patterns of behavior that might otherwise be dismissed as routine or trivial. A remembered detail, an unexpected act of assistance, or a quiet presence during moments of difficulty can all serve as markers of enduring affection. These behaviors are manifestations of love that has been carefully negotiated with fear, the avoidant finding a way to bridge the gap between desire and self-protection. In this sense, subtle gestures are not secondary to words, but are primary expressions of emotional truth, conveying commitment, attention, and relational investment in ways that words might compromise. The significance of these gestures lies in their intentionality. Each small act is a decision to reach outward, despite the discomfort that intimacy brings. An avoidant may not say, "I love you" frequently, but they might notice your preferences, remember an important event, or show up when support is needed. These actions, while understated, reflect an inner effort to maintain connection and demonstrate attachment, without risking emotional overwhelm. This is love expressed in shadow form, a love that requires interpretation and recognition to be fully understood. The subtlety of these gestures also reflects the avoidant's ongoing negotiation with their own boundaries. By acting through behavior rather than words, they can express care while maintaining a sense of safety and control over their emotional exposure. The gestures themselves become a language of attachment, a symbolic dialogue where intention and attention are more significant than volume or drama. Observing these patterns carefully reveals that love can be present even when it is not loudly proclaimed, that care can exist beneath the surface, and that commitment can be embodied in actions rather than speeches. Each subtle act, whether it is an unexpected message, a considerate action, or a quiet show of attentiveness, represents an intentional engagement with relational life despite the avoidance instinct. Understanding these gestures requires a shift in perspective, to read between actions, to recognize the meaning in small moments, and to see them as expressions of emotional reality rather than as inconsequential habits. In essence, the avoidance love often exists in the space between words, revealed in behavior, and communicated through the nuances of presence, attention, and thoughtful intervention, providing a testament to attachment that persists beneath layers of protective distance, fear, and self-regulation. Jealousy and protective instincts in an avoidant partner often present themselves in subtle, easily overlooked ways, yet they are profound indicators of emotional attachment and investment. While avoidants resist overt displays of possessiveness or dependency, these emotions still exist beneath the surface, manifesting in nuanced behaviors that reflect concern, attachment, and care. Unlike individuals who are comfortable expressing their fears or vulnerabilities directly, the avoidant often channels their emotional intensity into indirect forms, making their investment less visible but no less real. This protective behavior may appear as a quiet watchfulness, a mild sense of irritability when the partner is engaging with others, or a subtle attempt to maintain connection without overt confrontation. It is crucial to understand that these responses are not expressions of control in a domineering sense, but rather signals that the avoidant is negotiating their own fear of loss while simultaneously expressing attachment. Their jealousy is not always vocalized. It can be encoded in small, often unconscious acts, such as lingering attention, careful observation of interactions, or efforts to create shared experiences that reinforce relational bonds. These behaviors reflect an internal conflict. The avoidant wants closeness and continuity in the relationship, yet the intensity of their feelings may trigger discomfort with vulnerability. Protective instincts emerge as a way to safeguard the relationship, as well as their own sense of security, without forcing them to confront the raw intensity of emotional exposure directly. This dynamic suggests that love persists even under the guise of restraint or distance, expressed through acts that maintain connection while negotiating personal boundaries. Observing these patterns requires a careful reading of both behavior and context. Subtle signs, an unexpected effort to help during a challenging time, a cautious attempt to assert boundaries around relational dynamics, or a nonverbal expression of concern can all indicate that the avoidant is emotionally invested despite their reluctance to articulate it. Their protective behaviors are often paradoxical. They may retreat or create space while simultaneously signaling through indirect means their attachment and desire to maintain the relationship. Understanding jealousy and protective instincts in this light transforms what might initially seem like indifference or coldness into a complex language of love constrained by fear. It becomes evident that these feelings are not contradictions to love but its shadow expressions, revealing a depth of attachment that operates beneath conscious awareness. The avoidance love is expressed less in words than in strategic, cautious, and often symbolic attempts to safeguard both the relationship and themselves. Recognizing this allows a deeper comprehension of their emotional world, where love exists in tension with self-protection and commitment manifests in careful observation, measured intervention, and subtle care. The persistence of these instincts, despite the challenges posed by avoidance, demonstrates that love remains active even in the presence of fear, revealing the intricate interplay between longing and caution, desire and restraint, and the enduring emotional reality of attachment beneath a surface of reticence. At the heart of the avoidance relational experience lies a profound inner conflict between the desire for freedom and the need for connection, a tension that defines their behavior and shapes the way they love. This duality is not a reflection of ambivalence toward a partner, but a deeper psychological negotiation between two powerful drives within the self. On one hand, the avoidant longs for intimacy, closeness, and emotional resonance, recognizing the comfort, support, and fulfillment that connection brings. On the other hand, the very act of allowing someone into their emotional world can trigger feelings of suffocation, vulnerability, and loss of autonomy, which evoke anxiety and defensive responses. This tension manifests in patterns of approach and withdrawal, engagement and retreat, where moments of closeness are often followed by periods of distance. The avoidance mind perceives intimacy as a potential threat to the self, an experience that may awaken unconscious fears rooted in early attachment experiences or unmet emotional needs. Consequently, love is expressed cautiously, indirectly, and often paradoxically. Each gesture of connection is measured against the risk of perceived engulfment, and each withdrawal is an attempt to preserve psychological equilibrium while maintaining the possibility of attachment. This internal conflict is dynamic and continuous, shaping the rhythm of the relationship and the way the avoidant negotiates emotional investment. Observing the avoidant reveals a pattern where love persists, but it is constrained by fear. Their need for freedom is not an absence of affection, but a protective mechanism designed to prevent emotional overwhelm. And their desire for connection is not casual, but deeply rooted, expressed through subtle attention, care, and occasional vulnerability. The struggle between these two forces often produces behaviors that seem contradictory. The avoidant may draw near during moments of crisis or shared joy, yet retreat when routine intimacy demands sustained vulnerability. These oscillations are not failures of love, but reflections of the tension between attachment and self-preservation. Understanding this inner conflict requires recognizing that the avoidance behavior is a symbolic negotiation where autonomy and connection are constantly weighed, balanced, and sometimes compromised. Their love is present in the attempts to maintain closeness despite fear, in the careful modulation of presence and absence, and in the subtle gestures that reveal attachment without overwhelming exposure. The interplay between freedom and connection illuminates the depth of their emotional landscape, showing that love exists not only in overt affirmation, but also in the measured navigation of relational boundaries. The avoidance attachment, therefore, is not diminished by their fear, but expressed in ways that are compatible with their internal needs and psychological safety. By seeing the avoidant struggle as a dance between longing and self-protection, it becomes evident that love is active, persistent, and enduring, even when expressed in ways that are cautious, symbolic, or indirect, revealing the profound complexity of emotional life constrained by fear, yet motivated by desire. Moments of vulnerability in an avoidant partner are rare and fleeting, yet they are profound indicators of genuine love and emotional investment. Avoidants are naturally inclined to shield their inner world from exposure, as intimacy often triggers fears of engulfment, rejection, or loss of autonomy. Love, for them, exists in tension with these fears, and only in brief, carefully negotiated windows do they allow glimpses of their true emotional reality. These moments may manifest as a hesitant confession, a subtle expression of need, or an uncharacteristic admission of fear, uncertainty, or attachment. Each instance is a careful negotiation with vulnerability, a deliberate choice to reveal their heart despite the discomfort it produces. Recognizing these moments requires attentiveness and sensitivity, as they are often understated, easily overlooked, or dismissed as ordinary behavior. Yet, in the avoidance relational language, they carry enormous significance, signaling that love is present even when it is obscured by layers of self-protection. These windows into the heart are symbolic acts, revealing not only the depth of attachment, but also the courage required to confront internal fears. Each vulnerable expression is a testimony to the avoidance capacity for intimacy, a quiet demonstration that connection matters deeply to them, even if fear restrains their overt engagement. The significance of these moments lies in their rarity and authenticity. Unlike frequent verbal affirmations or visible demonstrations of care, they are unfiltered, spontaneous, and reflective of the avoidant's true emotional state. Observing them requires patience and a non-judgmental attitude, allowing the avoidant to express themselves without feeling pressured or unsafe. In this sense, vulnerability becomes a sacred space where love can be witnessed and honored, a bridge between emotional isolation and genuine connection. The avoidant's occasional willingness to step into this space also reflects their desire for relational growth and trust, signaling a readiness to risk exposure in the presence of safety and understanding. It is within these fleeting moments that their affection, care, and attachment become visible, revealing that their love has been present all along, concealed behind defense mechanisms, protective distance, and subtle gestures. By valuing these windows of vulnerability, one can appreciate the avoidant's love not as absent or conditional, but as nuanced, complex, and resilient, expressed through careful engagement with their own fears. These moments illuminate the relational reality that love in an avoidant context is not absent. It is expressed cautiously, symbolically, and selectively, requiring both recognition and respect to be fully experienced. Through these rare glimpses, the avoidant's heart communicates persistence, longing, and depth, demonstrating that even under fear's shadow, the capacity for authentic emotional connection endures, revealing the profound human need to love and be loved while navigating the tension between vulnerability and self-preservation. Understanding an avoidant's love requires patience, perception, and a willingness to see beyond the surface of behavior. Their distance is not absence, their inconsistency is not indifference, and their subtle gestures are not meaningless. Every protective withdrawal, every oscillation between closeness and retreat, every fleeting moment of vulnerability is a testament to love constrained by fear, yet persistent in its own quiet way. Recognizing these signs transforms the way we perceive attachment, allowing us to honor the hidden depths of emotion and the courage it takes to love while protecting oneself. In their silence and their guarded heart, love still resides, waiting to be witnessed, understood, and respected in its most profound, understated form.